Questions 59 and 60 are hypothesis formulation questions, so let's check it out. It says an experiment was carried out to determine the effect of exposure to ultraviolet or UV light on the growth of bacteria. Equal quantities of bacterial cells were spread on petri dishes that are used to grow colonies of bacteria. Half of each dish was shielded from the UV light with a UV screen. The other half was exposed to UV light for various amounts of time. After the UV treatment, the bacteria were grown in an incubator for 24 hours and the number of colonies was counted. So this should seem really familiar from our bacterial experiment that we did. So the diagram below represents the setup. So the difference between what we did and what they did is they shielded half of their petri dish from UV light and they exposed the other half of the petri dish to UV light. And then after 24 hours, they counted. So here's a data table looking at the results, but they want you to actually state a hypothesis for the experiment. So what do we think the experimenters were trying to test here? What was their expected result? So you could kind of almost cheat and look ahead and see which ones grew more bacteria or less bacteria, but you could also make your own prediction. So you could say, really the question you want to ask yourself is, do bacteria die when they're exposed to UV light, or will bacteria survive if they're shielded from UV light? So some potential ways of stating your hypothesis are shown here. The one that we practiced the most in class were the if ones, right? So we have the if bacteria are exposed to UV light, then they will form fewer colonies than those that are not exposed. Here's another if then. We've got if bacteria are exposed to UV light, then they will not form colonies. So all these things are okay, but in general you want to tell me what will happen or what will not happen to bacterial growth because of the UV light. The next part that we want to address is whether or not the results from this experiment support your hypothesis. So it all depends on what hypothesis you put. If you thought that the UV light would kill the bacteria or would limit the number of bacteria that would grow, then this seems to support that hypothesis, right? So on the side with the screen, you consistently get about 20 colonies of bacteria. But on the side that has been exposed to UV light, the longer it's exposed to UV light, the fewer bacterial colonies grow until you have almost zero at 10 minutes. So as long as your hypothesis and whether or not it supported your hypothesis match each other, you can get credit for that second part. So I'll show you what the answer key says about that. So it says, oh, I forgot to mention, do not allow credit for a hypothesis written in the form of a question. That's really important. And that doesn't just mean you can't put a question mark at the end. It means it can't be in the phrasing of a question. If you notice, all these are statements which you can either prove to be true or false. And in the second part, you have to say why was it proved to be true or why was it proved to be false. So here's some examples of how you could say why it was proved to be true. So you could say it's supported because more exposure to UV light resulted in fewer bacterial colonies. I like this answer. I feel like it's the most eloquent one given. But no matter what, if you describe that it supported your hypothesis and your hypothesis was that UV light will form less bacterial growth, you're all good. All right, I'm gonna break this up into another video, so thanks for watching.